Do it.
Okay. 1 second and we will go live. I was telling Peter, I was telling Devon that this is going to go live to my private Facebook group, which right now has over 4,000 members. And then it will get turned into a podcast tomorrow. So it'll be released tomorrow then as a podcast too. Okay, here we go. All right. So today I have the honor of bringing on very special guests, Devon and Peter, both founders of Kinetic, which you guys have been hearing me talk about how much I love Kinetic's drink. I love it. I love it. So I was at KetoCon. Here's my story. I was at KetoCon. I'm walking around. I was a speaker there last year. I'll be there again this year. And I run into this brand new exogenous ketone drink called Kinetic. Girls are at the booth. I'm talking to them. And of course, you know, you got the samples out. I take a sample with me. I'm drinking it. First of all, it tastes like I'm drinking a margarita. So I'm like, ooh, this is really good. Second, I keep circling back to this booth talking to them because I'm like, wait a minute. I'm drinking this as I'm walking around. And I mean, I've been talking, I've been on stage, I've been mingling and networking, and my energy's up. I'm not hungry. My brain feels like it just got lit up and turned on. And I'm talking to them, and I am just so impressed with this drink. We start collaborating, and I said, I need to have the founders on because I can't just come on and tell you guys about it. I'm not going to do it justice. So we're going to dive into Kinetic, but we're also going to dive into all those symptoms that you have with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, the brain fog, the fatigue. I hear you guys. I know that that's a big one. And we're going to dabble in the weight loss department too. But let's really focus on the brain fog, fatigue, energy that I know so many of you are struggling with right now. So, Devon and Peter, thank you for jumping on today and giving us your wisdom around exogenous ketones. We're going to clear some confusion and some myths, and we're just going to have a good time. So, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Dr. Amy. It's great to be here.
Really, it's an honor.
Cool. Well, okay. So, you heard my story of how I stumbled upon you guys. So, let's start with, how did you get into this space of exogenous ketones? Because we know that it's been talked about in the health space, nutrition space, biohacking space forever. And what led you there to begin with?
Well, I'll take a first stab at that one. I think Devon and I are both busy guys, entrepreneurial, have, families and kids and are juggling a million things and are always exhausted. And we actually stumbled into the world of ketones through a podcast that was about human performance and hacking and diet and exercise and health and longevity. And that's where we first learned about the ketogenic diet and this health molecule that you create naturally when you burn fat and you create BHB in your body, and your brain loves it and your muscles use it. And there's all these rejuvenating effects and ancillary benefits to ketones. And so we're like, we got to try this out. So we did the diet, new year, new diet, always experimenting, always having fun. So I think it was like 4 years ago we first tried it or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of a challenge making that jump and changing the groceries and dealing with the keto flu, which was very real. And but it was like, once you got to the other side of that, you just felt so great. You felt this clarity. You felt so much energy. I felt better at the gym. I was just kind of like walking on air. But I really struggled with the diet itself because I had allergies and other health issues that made it really difficult. Not to mention that I've got this family that wasn't interested in doing the keto diet, and it's hard enough to get a dinner on the table. And like now we're cooking like 3 different meals. So it's like we got to figure out a better way, right? This is America. There's certainly a way to like kind of hack the system. And that's when we started researching and learning about the world of exogenous ketones. And first of all, I was just ecstatic. I was like, yes, there is a way. There's stuff out there. And so we started with ketone salts and started buying some of those and trying it out. And like, I was a little skeptical because, some of it was, had caffeine in it. And I was like, that's not really what I'm looking for. I had some other products and like, man, my belly just got rocked. And like, I was like, this isn't making me more efficient throughout the day. This is painful. And it wasn't, I wasn't feeling the same level of efficacy as I did with the diet. And so, back to the drawing board, back to Google, what else is there? And, discovered ketone esters. All right, they're expensive, but made the purchase, made the investments, had to see what it's like, and took my first sip. Like, you want to spit it out, but you just spent so much money on it. So like down the gullet it goes. But at least with that, like I felt a bit more efficacy from it. I could feel the ketones surging through me, and I felt that mental clarity. I felt more of that energy. But like the next day when I was ready to take another shot, I didn't feel a desire to put that ester back in my mouth at all, because it just, it's like bile almost. I mean, it's nail polish remover. It's horrible. It's horrible. So through that, we're like, well, what's going on here? We started reading through patents. We started looking into formulations, started learning about BHB, the R versus the D, and through happenstance, made a connection through to Richard Veitch at NIH, who first sort of discovered ketone esters, and he had discovered a company that accidentally had formulated from plants a way to make the identical BHB that we produce in our liver when we burn fat and turn it into ketones. So we flew down and met with them and had formulated a way to make it taste really good. And so basically we created a drink that had all the components of the ketone ester without the ester bond in it. So the ester bond is what really is that like nasty tasting thing, right? So I have a lot of background in food and beverage, and coming from the restaurant world, and have been creating restaurants for 10 years. So I've been doing recipes and menus and making beverages forever. So I've got a career of making bad things taste good. And so we were actually able to formulate something that, as you so aptly put, tasted like a margarita. There might be a reason behind that.
Just saying.
So we were testing it out and trying to figure out what's working best and what flavors worked well. And, I think at the end of the day, when, we found something we liked, and then we gave it to my 8-year-old son, and he's like, this tastes good. And I was like, this is like the life cereal test. My son's name is Micah. I was like, Micah likes it. So there we go. At that point, we knew that we had something. We knew that we had solved the problem with the flavoring, and that had been an issue for many decades. We had a formulation that was not only able to make it taste really good, but was really effective. We were doing the blood work to see what our ketone levels were going up with. We were actually going a little bit higher than the esters, sometimes same as the esters, and everybody's metabolism was a little bit different. But as we tested 10, 20, 30 people, we're like, we're right there. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's right there, sometimes it's a little bit below, but people are drinking it. The one test we did do is like, oh, have ours, now taste the ester. And it was just, 10 times out of 10, our drink was vastly preferred. So, we put together a brand, we built the websites, and we decided to launch this product during the pandemic, because that's what makes the most sense, right? When the world shut down, go start a new business. When you can't meet anybody, launch a new drink. When the world finally did reopen up, we were able to start going to conferences again and meeting wonderful people such as yourself, and being able to introduce Kinetic to everyone. And it's been wonderful to not only like share what we've created and what brings us so much joy and makes our day like more efficient and just so much more improved, but also to see it like actually help some people who have some very serious afflictions. And so for us, I think that's just been the best part of it all.
So you said so much there. I want to go back and break down just for the listeners, because I have not yet dove into beneficial effects of exogenous ketones, the esters, the salts, the BHB, all the differences. And there's so much information out there and so many biohackers using those terms. Can we categorize and break down kind of the pros and cons? Like you said, the esters, yes, they are not even doable. I mean, I can't. That's so bad. So can you break down the pros and cons of all of those?
Devon, why don't you tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there are just in terms of the products that are out there on the for the esters, like Peter said, and you said, they work really well. You're going to get a pretty significant boost in ketone levels, but they don't taste good and they're expensive. The salts are it's BHB. It's the ketones, but it's bonded to a mineral, either calcium or magnesium or sodium typically, and they're blended. So I would say, good 95% of the products that you see out there, whether it's in pill form or powder form, they're all going to be ketone salts. The challenge with ketone salts is that while they taste better, certainly than the esters, it's about 30% salt to BHB ratio. And so in order to get a useful dose, in order to raise your ketone levels up, above 1 millimole, you're going to get a really unhealthy dose of salt. Typically, I mean, up to the 3,000 milligram level, which is above the maximum daily recommended amount. The challenge for that is primarily from GI discomfort perspective. Typically, that's going to give you diarrhea if you drink that much salt that quickly. And so it's hard to get a beneficial amount of ketones through salts. And so Kinetic is different in that it's not a salt, it's not an ester. It is, as Peter mentioned, the two components that actually form a ketone ester. It's the exact molecule your body creates, the BHB acid, it's the D-beta hydroxybutyric acid, and then also 1,3-butanediol, which is converted 100% into that D-BHB acid by your liver when you digest it. And so you get that initial boost of BHB, elevate your ketones, and then you get more of a sustained elevation through the 1,3-butanediol. So those two things together, along with, to sweeten it, we use allulose and a tiny bit of stevia, and then natural fruit flavors, actual pineapple, passion fruit, orange that's been sort of dehydrated, concentrated, the fructose removed, so that the Kinetic doesn't elevate your blood sugar levels. It actually reduces blood sugar concentrations in your blood as well. So that's kind of the difference between the esters and the salts and Kinetic.
And I appreciate that, because there's so much information out there and there's so many products out there. Like you mentioned earlier, there's a ton of multi-level marketing products out there. And then just even major companies coming out with BHB and naming it ketone something, but it doesn't necessarily have the same benefits that you're talking about with Kinetic. So like I mentioned earlier, I immediately, and I am no bullshit on this podcast. I mean, my listeners know my life, my experiences, good and bad. I legitimately felt a difference walking around KetoCon, like I said in the beginning, as soon as I took that one drink. And I kept kind of coming back for more because I was like, this is going to keep me going the whole weekend. It was amazing. So why is it? Can you go into the why people feel their brain fog lift, and it's almost like you are more attentive and you know what's going on and you have motivation and you want to go talk to people and put me on stage. I'm ready for my talk. Everything was just kind of lit up but I wasn't quite sure why, because it's not like I just drank a bunch of caffeine. I didn't, I wasn't even intermittent fasting that day because there were so many samples at KetoCon. I was eating too. So why did I feel so good? Can you get into the science behind the brain and energy component?
Well, let's start by saying that you were not the only one that did a couple laps around our booth and kept pulling samples from the table. We were happy to have so many people keep coming back and like, oh, can I have another one? I was like, just take the bottle, enjoy your day. So, yeah, we were really curious about that ourselves. And we do know from other studies about exogenous ketones that your brain actually prefers ketones to glucose. They've done PET scans and neuroimaging, and they've put in radioactive glucose, seen it being uptaken into the brain, and then introduced exogenous ketones. And then the color immediately shifts. The glucose is flushed out, ketones are flushed in, your brain has the choice, and between them, it's going to take ketones every time. But we were, we knew that, and we'd seen that from other studies. But like when for me personally, when I was drinking Kinetic in the morning, and it's just sort of my motivation in the bottle, if I'm ever struggling to get my day going, or sometimes it's just hard to start cracking into those emails and answering all the questions that people have, I just found for me that like I could drink a Kinetic and I would just start going, and 2 hours later I'd look back and be like, how did I get all that accomplished? Like it just flew by, and I was just getting so much shit done. Pardon me. But I just like felt like amazing at like how much I was getting accomplished. So I said, Devon, we gotta look into this, because like something is going on. There's something else going on up here. And Devon is actually able to find somebody who has been doing brain scans using an EEG. It's actually a QEEG. So you put on a cap, and it's got all the sensors around. They were working with first responders and people in the military who had suffered from traumatic brain injury, and were doing a bunch of measurements and doing the ketogenic diet themselves to help, because they realized ketones provide the energy to the brain that they need to help them recover. So we started off and did a study with them, and we did a baseline scan, saw their normal brainwave levels, electrical activity in the brain, gave them a Kinetic, 30 minutes later rescanned. And that they called us and they're like, you won't believe these results. I mean, this is just, they're like, we've never seen anything like this before. Alpha brain waves were up 18%. Your alpha brain waves are associated with calmness and creativity. A lot of times people see it when you see an increase in that when you're meditating. And people see it a lot too when artists and they're creating something new. Alpha is usually going off the charts. The other brain wave that was really firing off was gamma, and that is associated with problem solving and spatial awareness. So the combination of being both calm and creative and in a problem solving mindset, it's the perfect combination to put you in the zone, to just tackle the day, to solve problems, to get things done. I know my wife is an artist too, and like I'm just always inspired by how she's able to figure out how to put things on paper and what color and what carving and what to do. And it's, Kinetic is a great creative tool for her too. Anytime she gets stuck and I just see her pacing around, I'm like, just go drink a Kinetic, it'll solve the problem. And she just disappears up into her studio for 3 hours. So it's just know that we've actually measured and seen this increase in electrical brain activity. And it really is within 30 minutes. I mean, for some people, it's much faster. It can be 15 or 20, but in this study, it was showing in 30 minutes, an 18% increase in electrical brain activity.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because as I said earlier, so many hypothyroid patients struggle with that brain component. I've even heard them say, I feel like I have early Alzheimer's because I can't recall words when I'm speaking, and my memory, and I'm forgetting where I put my phone, and it's in my pocket. And I think it's important to circle back to a statement you said in the beginning. Our brains prefer ketones. And too often there is this narrative of glucose, which is why, oh yeah, if you're going to go run a marathon, pound the carbs, your brain needs glucose. And even kids these days with autism, ADD, ADHD, we're giving them a crap ton of processed foods and sugar. And if we gave them or allowed their brain to utilize the preferred fuel of ketones, we might see a marked improvement in that. There was even a Netflix documentary called The Magic Pill, where they were using the ketogenic diet with autistic kids that were nonverbal, and they started talking. So this is taking that ketogenic diet one step further and actually providing the fuel that the brain requires. So I just wanted to expand on that point, because I think it gets brushed over and we focus too much on the glucose component, because, you know, that's what we heard for the last bajillion years of eat your carbs before you perform, because that's what your brain requires. Or you better eat your breakfast before you go to school, because that's what your brain needs. Have that bowl of cereal. And that's actually the complete opposite of what our brain requires.
Yeah, it's really true. And more research is coming to light about that. You know, a couple of interesting points on that. One is that glucose, you know, it gets metabolized through the citric acid cycle, and there are 9 steps in that cycle. And in that process, glucose, you produce free radicals, which lead to inflammation. Ketones actually enter that Krebs citric acid cycle 3 steps away from ATP. So it's going through much less of fewer chemical reactions, and it does not produce free radicals either. In fact, ketones scavenge free radicals. And what that means is that it protects the brain cells and it reduces inflammation. And so not only does it do that directly, but ketones are a signaling metabolite. So they actually tell your body to activate its natural antioxidant or anti-inflammatory pathways. And so by that, it actually reduces inflammation and reduces the markers for inflammation in the body and in the brain. So it has that dual action. It's not creating those inflammatory free radicals. It's protecting your brain cells, and it's also reducing inflammation through that natural anti-inflammatory pathways. There was a recent study actually out of Stanford that was looking into COVID brain fog. And they have you read this one? They discovered that it's very similar to the brain fog that you get on chemo. And what that is from is your body's immune reaction and the inflammatory response from your immune reaction in your brain. And so that leads to brain fog. And so there's a parallel there between the COVID brain fog and chemo brain fog. And what's nice about, obviously, one of the beautiful things about ketones is that it reduces that inflammation. It provides that direct source of energy, the preferred source of clean energy for your brain and your neurons. One final point on that is that as we age, and for folks with, you know, cognitive impairment and cognitive decline, our brains kind of reduce its ability to metabolize glucose, kind of trails off, and that's what can lead to the cognitive decline, is because your brain is not getting the energy that it needs. Your brain cells, all of the cells in your body, are dependent on insulin to draw the glucose in to get energy from it. But your brain cells, none of your cells need insulin to use ketones for energy. It goes just straight into the cells, and your mitochondria can turn it into ATP like that. And so that also contributes to why, to your earlier point, you know, you just feel, your brain just feels more fresh, more sharp, because it's getting the fuel that it needs.
Right. Right. And I find it interesting that Peter said that you let your son try, your 8-year-old son try it. Has he used it beyond that one trial run for the taste? And do you notice that he does better in school? He pays more attention. Any kind of anecdotal evidence with the kids?
Yeah, you know, we haven't done any testing with the kids or anything like that. So we kind of, you know, we're not
You want to kind of,
like that. But for me personally, I have given it to them. I have given it to them before testing. I have noticed that it helps them focus. With my eldest before soccer games, sometimes he has back-to-back or multi-game headers. And so like, I'll, you know, have him take it at halftime. I know it gives him an energy boost. And I've seen that it helps with focus. I've also gotten in trouble because one of them, my youngest, snuck into my fridge in the basement. He drank 2 of them. And then he just started talking a blue streak to my wife. And she kind of dragged him into my office and said, Peter, your son hasn't stopped talking to me for 20 minutes straight. He drank 2 of your ketones, like your problems to deal with now. So, so you're right. When you said it did make you more chatty and like ready to go up on the stage, we've definitely noticed it. It makes you more chatty, especially if you're a little pint. And
exactly.
So
all A's in school, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, Devon, going back to what you're saying too about the glucose in the brain, we also know, this is kind of taking it back to the older population, we know that Alzheimer's is now considered type 3 diabetes. And in my population of thyroid patients, I see 99% of them with insulin resistance. So like you said, you don't want to drive up insulin to try to get glucose into the cell or to the brain. We want to keep insulin low. My goal with my patients is let's keep that insulin low, both for obviously weight loss, for improved inflammatory responses. I want to keep people's reverse T3 low, which is pushed up with high insulin levels, and you know, the performance, XYZ, everything, longevity. So it's interesting when you say about that you don't need insulin. We don't have to keep driving insulin high in order to improve brain function and energy. Let's get the ketones up. Let's give the body what it wants. So I'm glad that you touched on that, because I see a ton of insulin resistance in my practice and in my population.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I love that context around it. And there's even evidence that ketones improves insulin sensitivity as well. We've got ongoing studies there too. University of British Columbia is actually doing a kind of a large study there. And one of the things one of the exciting things for us is, and for them, I would say, is that one of the barriers to using exogenous ketones in that capacity is that the efficacy and the tolerability of the products, whether it's from a GI perspective or just a flavor perspective, is low. So folks aren't going to be willing or able to drink them on an ongoing basis. When we made that connection, we were both thrilled to find each other, because they now have a product that they can use on a long-term study to study these effects, and we were glad to make that connection with some really talented researchers at UBC.
That's awesome, and it just makes sense that because when you're testing, like you guys said, you tested your blood and you saw the ketone markers go up. If anybody's ever tested, you can't have high ketones and high glucose at the same time. So when glucose rises, it's pushing your ketones down. And then when ketones go up, you're going to see, and this is tying in glucose and non-insulin, but they're all in the same family. You're going to see that reduction of glucose. So my goal with my patients, with my listeners, and reducing the overall insulin and that insulin marker that we see on labs that I want to see below a 6 is to keep your glucose steady. I want to see that A1C between a 4.8 and 5.1. Keep your glucose steady. If you're jacking your glucose up, you're going to have that high A1C. You're going to have insulin that's through the roof, and it's going to obviously create inflammation, push up reverse T3, like I said before, and stop your body from actually tapping in the fat for fuel. So there's that next layer. So I think just putting the ketones in is naturally going to help with insulin resistance and better glucose control, because you can't have one high. Well, you can't have them both high. You're not going to have high ketones and high glucose at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So I know that we kind of talked behind the scenes months ago, and we might have to move forward with this, about using ketones with hypothyroid patients because of all those connections of brain fog and energy, ATP, like you said, at the mitochondria level, cell function, and just improved brain function overall. Have you seen anything anecdotally? I know probably not study-wise, but anecdotally with thyroid patients' numbers improving from implementing the Kinetic drink?
Gosh, anecdotally, 100%. And I don't know the numbers from, these customers. They haven't shared those with us, but there are a couple of customers who I know have hypothyroidism who are shocked at how the effect, and it was within a couple of days. It didn't take long for them to adjust to using ketones. These are folks who had not experimented with the keto diet or fasting at all. So it was folks who hadn't been accustomed to using ketones for energy. Within a couple of days, noticed a real substantial boost in energy, to the point where they were able to, they were awake more during the day. They were able to do more during the day. They were actually able to start coming off some of their medications. And that is just observational, anecdotal. It would be great to have some to do, and I'd love to do just a pilot study, more of a controlled study with folks, just to get a better sense for what that signal is, because anecdotally it seems to be real, and we've got some big fans out there right now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm one of them. So you had mentioned intermittent fasting too. And Peter, you talked about intermittent fasting, that when you're drinking Kinetic, it definitely helps you implement an intermittent fast without kind of having to drag your ass through it, going, oh, I'm really hungry. When do I get to eat? Right. So how does that occur? Why is that? Why does Kinetic help people when they want to implement intermittent fasting for the variety of health benefits that IF has? But why does Kinetic help them with that?
Yeah, I love intermittent fasting and routinely do 16/8, and we'll do 24-hour fasts. And for me, I'll just run into moments where I kind of hit a wall, and I'm like, the hangriness is kicking in, the brain fog is kicking in, I'm getting a little tired and irritable, and I'll grab a Kinetic, and it just cleans it up in 15 minutes for me. And I notice a couple benefits right away. Like, first of all, I just feel energy coming back. My brain is back in the game. I'm feeling clear. I'm feeling focused. I can get back on track to what I was doing. But the big game changer for me is I'm not hungry anymore. And we know through other exogenous ketone studies that ketones reduce the hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin. And so when you drink Kinetic, it's actually reducing that hormone, which is reducing hunger. And for me, I'm a pretty big guy, and one Kinetic will hold off any hunger for about a good 2 hours. So it's also wonderful because I'm constantly on the go. I'm doing tons of things all the time. And it's just like, sometimes meetings like today get stacked up, and I'm like, when's the time for lunch? Well, I can just drink Kinetic instead. And so I always just keep one in the center console of my car. I've got a thing of concentrate always in the fridge ready to go, because sometimes there just isn't time to sit down and enjoy a meal when you're trying to, get the most out of life as possible. And so, anytime I need that extra boost of energy, or I just, don't have time for that meal, or I just, want to reduce that hunger and extend my fast, it's right there for me. It's quick and easy.
And I'm even thinking of adding it kind of from a biohacking standpoint on, let's say, the holidays that we just came off of, right? When you know that you're going to go into a food-laden day, a celebratory, whole bunches of Christmas cookies looking at you kind of day, you could add this in to, let's say, intermittent fast until that event, that party, that get together, that big meal. And then your ketones are up. And this is where I'm going to kind of dip my toe into the weight loss aspect a little bit. You could use this to actually help control your hunger so you don't go crazy when you are faced with food. I mean, it's not meant to be an appetite suppressant. We're not saying that, but it is definitely going to help you when you're faced with that much food. Maybe do an intermittent fast before you go. And then maybe just not be, as you said, hangry. If you go into a party hangry, you're eating everything in sight. Where you would fully intend to try 2 cookies, you're trying 10 of them. We know that. We've all been there and done that. So what I noticed too is, even if I change this, here's where I'm dipping my toe into the weight loss. So we can use it for events, for intermittent fasting, like you said, even to do an intermittent fasted planned day or a crazy day where all of us don't have time to eat. But I want to give the listeners my personal experience. I am pretty much a stable weight. I don't really change what I eat at all. I pretty much do the same thing. And I added in Kinetic, and all of a sudden I'm like, things are fitting differently. Things are looser. And I grabbed a pair of pants that were a little bit snugger that I'm like, I only wear these on like special occasions. They were loose. So something's going on. And I know we can't say that this is a weight loss anything because we're all in the supplement space and we know we don't want to piss off the FDA. But anecdotally, I noticed a change in my clothes. So can you expand on that a little bit, maybe? Just a little bit?
It's interesting. Besides the reduction in hormones and in the hunger hormone, Kinetic does have calories in it, and it's 60 calories, and it's all from the ketones. So when you drink it, you're getting the energy you need, your brain's getting energy you need, your muscles can use it, but those 60 calories are straight from the ketones, and ketones cannot be converted into fat. In fact, they are fat getting converted into energy, and they don't go back in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. So you either use the fuel, your brain uses it, your heart uses it, your muscles use it, or you pee it out. And that's it. So it never gets converted and stored into fat. So besides being able to control cravings and appetite, and you're absolutely right, walking into a holiday party when you haven't eaten all day is a terrible idea, because that's when you're really going to make a mistake. And, it's a social engagement too. So you might as well drink a Kinetic because it's going to make you chatty as all get out too. So I think it's great for that exact use. And the fact that there's only 60 calories in it that are just going to get used or be gone. It's fantastic.
Awesome. I like it. Well, and then the other thing that I totally forgot to mention earlier as well is with intermittent fasting, I tell people to intermittent fast intuitively, meaning you don't want to go into, let's say, tomorrow and grit your teeth and be miserable and say, oh, I know I have to intermittent fast, so tomorrow is going to be an OMAD day. And if you are totally miserable, you are actually producing cortisol. When you're fighting through your hunger, you're producing cortisol because fasting is a stress. We know fasting is a stressor on the body. It's a good stress. It's a hormetic stress, but it's a stressor. So if you go into that fast and you're miserable, now you're producing cortisol. Now that's affecting your thyroid. Now that's affecting your glucose. Now that's pushing up your reverse T3. If you do it naturally, intuitively, where you legitimately are not hungry. So let's say you do wake up, you take a Kinetic drink and you go, no, seriously, it's 2 and I'm not hungry. It's 3 p.m. and I am not hungry. Now you're not getting that cortisol spike from it because it's not a stressor. It's ease. It's ease. And just like you said, Peter, you're like, we get busy sometimes and one meeting leads into the next meeting and you're like, I haven't eaten yet today. What the heck? But it's not a stressor on your body because it's natural.
I love that way of looking at it. Intuitive fasting. For me, that's what it was. It was just actually a lot easier on my day to not eat breakfast because trying to get the kids out the door, it's just another thing that I don't have to worry about. And then over time, I would say 2 to 3 days, not even that long, you know, my fasting window grew and I skipped breakfast. I wouldn't get hungry until 10 and then 11 and then 12. And then suddenly I'm on a, 16-8 cycle. And having the Kinetic there really helps to get to that point. And then when I eat lunch, when I break my fast and my brain takes a dive because, it was a sandwich and I'm flooded with carbs now, drink a Kinetic and it clears it right up. Or on a Sunday morning when I eat a stack of pancakes with the kids, I don't know if I want to go back to bed, drink a Kinetic and you feel normal again. It's actually like magic. I'm not just saying that. It actually is like magic.
Just try it. Yeah. Damage control. Yeah.
Going back to the kind of the origin story here a little bit, that's really where this started was, I personally, and I think I speak for Peter as well, would have been happy if, this just resulted in a lifetime supply of Kinetic for us because of that reason. And so, it's I like how you talked about that, intuitive and intermittent fasting. That's going to stick with me.
Very cool. Cool. So what do you guys have planned for 2022? Anything new coming out? Anything we can look forward to besides the products that you already have, which are really amazing just in and of themselves? So,
well, we've been working on a few new flavors. So we've got 3 that actually are really great. They're better than the flavor that we have right now.
Impossible. No, it's impossible.
That's that too. And we just went and made them again recently as we're getting ready to get to production. And I was like, this is really good. Like I could drink, it's just like something you can drink all day. You can barely tell that it's, got ketones in it and it's this functional beverage. It's refreshing and enjoyable. So I'm not sure if we've decided yet which one we're going to roll out first, but we'll be sure to be sending you some samples and you give us some feedback on maybe which one we should launch with.
Well, thank you. I will be happy to give you my feedback and no judgment to the listeners. If you bring the Kinetic with you to the bar and just order a shot of tequila and just put them together, you don't need their sugary mixers. You just throw, I'm just saying these guys didn't say it. It's coming straight from me. It's all for me. So I'm just saying there's another way to use Kinetic.
And we do have something special for your listeners too.
We do. You guys are so generous. I can't even get over it. So we have the link in the show notes. We have the link in the description. You are on my sponsors page on my website. So if you go to dramyharman.com/sponsors, you're going to see it on there. But you're giving them 25% off. So if they use the code Dr. Amy 25, so DRAMIE 25, you're giving them 25% off their first order of Kinetic. That's so amazing of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
We want everybody to try it. So do take advantage of that code while it lasts. Give it a shot. You're going to love it. And you're going to love the flavor, especially if you're familiar with exogenous ketones. So check us out at drinkkinetic.com. You can find the links on Dr. Amy's website and use that code.
Yep. And they're in the show notes. They're in that. They're everywhere. So if you guys need them, just ask me, but we put them everywhere. So you gotta try it. I mean, you got to try it. We've talked a lot of great things today. So that is my tip to you is to get some Kinetic. Peter, Devon, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been great. It's been fun.
We'll definitely have you back on. We'll do more like anecdotal stuff. We'll get some patients on that tried it. So, all right. Thanks so much and take care.
Thank you, Dr. Amy.